Hi and welcome. Thanks for joining us. If you're listening, if you're watching, we are live. I've got Steve Wiideman with me. How are you, Steve?
Fantastic. Good morning, Johnny. How are you?
You're in. I'm really good, and it's good afternoon where I am.
That's right. Yeah,
Evening, but you're in California, aren't you?
I am. Sunny Southern California this morning. It's nice and 75 degrees, perfect, and it's gonna be a great week.
What time have we got you up from? What time is it there now?
It's not that early. It's about 10 o'clock over here.
Oh, okay. We're fine. You're already awake for the day. Fabulous. So you are president of the Wiideman Consulting Group. We were just talking in the green room just then. You were, quite well. You're big in SEO right now, but you were huge in the 2000s. How the hell did you get into SEO? I mean, I've got a backstory in SEO. It was a Google penalty that got me into it.
Oh,
How
wow.
did you get into it, Steve?
Well, Google penalties didn't exist when I started in digital marketing. I was in the late 90s. I was just coming out of the military and had an interest in web design. And I started to do all sorts of freelance clients, project work, and building these gaudy websites with bevel and embossed buttons and scrolling marquees and all the silly stuff we did in the 90s. And my clients came back and they're like, if I'm going to keep paying you to do this website stuff, it's got to make money. So I had to, out of necessity, figure out how to get traffic to their website. We started with submitting to directories, and we started getting in the Open Directory project and Yahoo Directory, and Google, of course, came along in 98 and started to look at off-page signals. So we were trying to get links to our client sites, and it just became addicting. Next thing you knew, your whole goal in life was to be number one in Yahoo, number one in Excite and Alta Vista, and all those old search engines we used to use, Ask Jeeves, and and then it just kind of grew from there. I went back to school, I got a degree in e-business management. I picked up a role at Disney Parks and Resorts where I managed Disneyland commerce and marketing search, as well as a new brand, Adventures by Disney. And did my time there. They started to move that department to Celebration, Florida, and my family and I decided to stay. So I picked up some agency work and eventually decided, you know what, I want to be close to my family and just work from home. And some of the organizations I'd worked with, my friends and peers all moved on to big jobs, remembered me, called me, and next thing you know, I'm helping some pretty exciting brands as an independent consultant. And the rest, I guess, is history.
The question is, did you get any free roller coaster rides?
Yeah, actually, we did quite a bit of brand immersion. On my one day that I was at the Anaheim location and not in Burbank. It's like I'm going to lunch and come back and your hair's all Don King, and we had some fun. And they had this silver pass that they would give you, and so you'd be able to bring your friends and your family, and it felt like an unlimited card. You could just bring whoever you wanted to, and when you worked in that area of the business, they gave you that special pass. It was pretty fun. Yeah, we had a good time.
It's a dream job doing SEO and being able to ride roller coasters. Why did you leave? So we're going to be talking about local SEO. We're going to be talking about multi-location SEO. I was just asking you, the average client that you've got might have sort of 2,000 locations, some of them 4,000 locations. It blew my mind a tiny bit. It's not the sort of client that I work with on a typical basis.
Sure.
And so it's really interesting to get into this. We're going to be talking about the 4 pillars of local search engine optimization, how to scale it, especially if you've got multi-locations, and typically the sort of the smallest client that you might have 300 locations. So we're talking a serious number here, and so that's what this podcast is about, trying to get into some of that detail. Just to say, if you are watching right now, if you've got any questions, if you're on LinkedIn, if you're on Facebook, if you're on YouTube, and you've got any questions, please put them in the chat. We'll keep an eye out for any questions, whether it's for myself or for Steve. If you're listening, thanks for being here. It won't be live if you're listening on a podcast, but it's great that you're here, and thanks for being with us. So, Steve, 4 pillars of local SEO. Do we start on pillar 1?
Sure. Well, we could talk about what a localized search looks like, right? And 10 years ago, it was 7 listings in a map pack at the top of the search results and a few organic listings below. And we had sidebar ads and everything. The landscape of what would show up in a search result was completely different, and we were still kind of focused on desktop. 50% of our use of Google was done from a desktop computer. Now everybody's got a mobile device, and for multi-location and just any brand that's got a brick and mortar is probably going to get somewhere between 70 to 85% of their traffic now from mobile devices. So, what we see in the search results now is completely changed from what it was 10 years ago. Now, we still have those 3 maps at the top of the search results, sometimes some ads right above them, sometimes an ad right inside of there. And it's being predicted now that even that 3-pack we see might be at some point, a paid service. Your organic listing will still show up in Google Maps, but that blended 3-pack that you see in a regular web search may end up being something you have to pay to be in over the next few months as we start watching as Google's, testing new things and trying new things. Below that, we still have the organic results. So there's still 2 ways to get visibility in a search result. One is in that map pack organically, and one is organically in the search results. And in some cases, there's even video carousels and image carousels. There's a lot of real estate available. If we do the right amount of optimization, we could appear 4, 5, 6 times on page 1 of Google. So that's sort of what we're talking about when we talk about local search, is how much visibility can we get in a localized query for users who are on mobile devices, and how do we get the most traffic from those visitors who do see our listings. So that's kind of our goal, I think, when we think about local. The pillars themselves all start around data, our business data. Is it real? Is it something we made up? Is it a fake location? How does Google know? How does Google authenticate that you're real? How do they authenticate that you're still in business and open? Especially during a pandemic when so many businesses are closing down, and they validate that by just making sure that the places that they look for business data, that they bounce, their data off of, are still up to date with the right, correct, and consistent information. Not as bad as it used to be, 20 years ago or 15 years ago. We'd have to make sure that road was spelled exactly the same and not RD, street was spelled out or not, but consistent either way. Fortunately, Google's gotten a lot smarter over the years, and we don't have to worry about those permutations quite as much. But we do have to look at our business data being sort of the nucleus of the local SEO cell. If our data isn't accurate everywhere that Google is going to look for it, then we could lose out on some of that proximity ranking factor that Google might look at. Are you really there? Are you open? How do I know? How do I validate that? So there's ways that you can do that. If you're a single location business, you could use a tool like Bright Local or Moz Local. They have a direct connection to the 3 major databases, the Data Axle, the Localese, the Foursquare, and Factual. Foursquare got Factual, I think, about a year ago. So they manage that information in those major databases that are used by web directories all across the internet, to build their own databases from. They'll basically buy data, or they'll pay to make sure that their data is up to date with those different services. So I'd say the first thing you could do is just make sure your information is correct. Now, scaling that, if you do have 300 to 100,000 locations, no matter what you have, you'll probably want to choose a data management platform. These can be expensive, but they usually do a really good job of making sure that they take every single location and that they get this really cheap bulk pricing with those data providers, those aggregators, as we call them, to make sure that our business data is consistent for every single one. Some of my favorites include Yext, Rio SEO, Brandify, who recently just got purchased by Sochi. That's interesting. That happened recently, I think just a couple weeks ago. There's also Sim Partners. There's so many of them. Uberall, right? Our friend Greg Sterling over there from Local Search Associations over there now. And then Moment Feed. So these are all platforms that charge a per location amount to manage your business data at scale. And if you've got that part squared away, you've got a really good foundation now to build off of the other 3 pillars. So data number 1, right? And whether you're using Moz Local, Bright Local, or manually going out to those aggregators, or if you're using a platform like one of the ones I mentioned, you'll have a really good foundation for Google.
Which is your favorite?
Platform?
Yeah.
They change all the time. The features change. I like different features of different things. I love the people and the culture of Rio SEO. I love some of the answers features and other integrations of Yext. I love the innovation of Sochi and how they're growing so quick. Heard lots of great things about them. I think they're all great and they all have their own little core competencies of what you like or don't like. If you're not getting what you need from one vendor and they're not working with you to improve it, then look to the others.
Cool.
So, well, number 2, if we want to talk about pillar 2, pillar
So,
2 is the one
so just before you move to pillar 2,
Yeah.
what one of the words we've not used here is citations as well. So I assume that's the sort of thing you're talking about, directory citations, making sure that you're in the correct one, in the correct ones.
No, this is just data accuracy, making sure our information is correct and the places that purchase and use that data are correct. The citations are really in pillar 3. That's your off-page SEO, right? It's your data visibility. So these Foursquare and Data Axle and Newstar, they're not public directories, they're databases. So our goal
it's making sure that your core data is absolutely spot on.
Correct. Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
And that sometimes the issue comes in with that, where you want a call tracking number and you start using call tracking numbers everywhere instead of your actual local number. So there becomes a little bit of a ambiguity, I think, in the consistency of that business data. So just be careful if you're using call tracking numbers to use it in the right place and to supplement it with a real number somewhere in that listing. But,
excellent. Okay. Good question. Pillar 1, we understand it. It's all about data.
Yep. So pillar two, I think is relevancy, right? It's our landing page that we're submitting to all these different directories and citations in the next pillar. It's the information that we share to Google My Business. Is it available when they actually hit the page that you supplied to them and said, hey, this is my website? They go, really? And they crawl the page. They look at everything you've submitted in your Google My Business and they say, yep, there's your name, address, phone number, directions. Everything matches up with what you've told us. And then the user who gets to that page is going to say, wow, this is really helpful. It has all the information I need. It's got a coupon. It's got quick directions. I can see that they're open right now. Oh, look, there's even a video showing you what the place looks like inside and some location images. And oh, wow, look at this. They've actually got their employees with masks on. They're cleaning and they care about my safety. This is a business I want to patronize. I'm gonna click the directions link, or I'm gonna click order now and order online and go in and be a customer of this particular business. So the great thing about the landing page is it doesn't just help support your Google Maps rankings, it also helps to get your organic listing below the maps, because only 3. And if you've got 3 competitors who are legitimately better than you, and it happens, right? And we all think that we're the best at what we do and we're working to get there, but we're not always the best. And so the goal here is making sure that that page is optimized so it appears in that organic results. Now, I have a couple instances where with some of these multi-location brands where we were able to scale it even further. The first place we scale is the broader picture. If you're an auto repair shop and somebody searches for auto repair in the city that you're in, you want to make sure that in the organic results that you have location / the location itself, and that's a specific route location page. For a restaurant, it might be restaurant in whatever the city is, or pizza in whatever the city it is. But what happens if somebody has a specific need, such as delivery or takeout? What if they're looking for a restaurant job, like a server job or something? How do we address that at the local level and go beyond just our core page? Creating sub pages underneath each local page has been a huge win for every account that we've been able to test this with. With Meineke, we were able to create oil change pages, muffler pages, all the different reasons that people go to an auto repair shop. And in essence, in some cases, build out as many as 10, 15 sub pages that all appear somewhere on the first page of Google in those cities. For the restaurant chains, the restaurant delivery, breakfast takeout, restaurant takeout, those keywords we've been able to create content for that includes a title and a description that address those queries and be on the first page, in some cases above the delivery service providers like Uber Eats and Grubhub and Postmates, who recently took a huge dip. I don't know if it's the algorithm update or what, but that was a huge win. If you want to compete against, the big companies, the Yelps of the world and TripAdvisors and Uber Eats and Grubhubs that you see all over the search results, create content that's catered to those specific needs that people are looking for. If you're a breakfast restaurant, make sure that you have breakfast, as a core component of your content strategy. So why I'm passionate about this is we did a study. We actually looked at 300 local pages and we compared up what are the ones that are performing better than the ones that aren't, and what are those differences? And from a percentile perspective, what could it mean to the person who's doing local SEO if we took action on some of these? And what we found in that study, and by the way, it's the very first link on our homepage. We put it up in the main navigation just to give it more prominence, but it's a local SEO study that we did. And turned out hyper-local content, meaning content that was written specifically for that location, gave us 107% competitive advantage, which is great for a small business because they can just load up some pictures and call their nephew who runs their website and say, hey, can you put some content on this page? Nephew's like, sure. Boom. Next day they've got custom content. But try scaling that across 4,000 locations. Like, hey, Joe in SEO, I know you're running 4,000 locations. What are you doing for the next 8 years? Can you write some content? It's just not going to happen. So you've got to figure out a way to scale that. And just like with data, we use platforms. So whichever platform you happen to be using, they usually have a database that they pull from. Some of that information in the database comes from your own CRM, but some of it can be customized. So what we've been experimenting with is two different ways. One is sending out a survey to every location that's in that franchise list and simply asking them some questions. What's the nearest stadium? How far are you from the freeway? What are some reasons customers come to this location? What are some of the colleges that are nearby? And we tie that into the content, in a way that's dynamic. So it's basically a set of sort of static content, and then we inject in all this custom information, in some cases as many as 60 fields, and it works. We actually see those pages not get scrutinized by Google for being too similar. They become really unique and helpful. And it's great when you could say like, hey, did you just get out of a concert at the Staples Center and you're hungry? Come in and grab a bite, right? So there's some ways that we can tie in that localized content. The other challenge with that is getting local images, because sometimes your location might not be in the best area, especially if you're trying to scale this. There's no way that across thousands of locations, every single location's in a beautiful plaza, right? There's always going to be one or two that are just not in the greatest area. So pictures can be difficult to get, and it might take a little filtering of those images to get them the way you want. And it can take some moderation and someone managing that queue of all the images that are coming in to make sure that the images are appropriate, that faces are blurred out, license plates are blurred out. It could be a lot of work, but once it's done, it's done. It's just getting somebody in that seat to do that grunt work. The second thing was actually location images. So if you are able to, go on site, and one of my favorite things to do is, if the business is open to it, is working with a Google certified photographer to go in, because they'll actually upload the picture to Google Street Maps, which does two things. It helps validate the data accuracy, because now you've got a Google certified photographer uploading to the Google local street maps. On the website beer.tv, hey, look at that. My Google Assistant's going off over here. Hey, Google, stop. And so it's really great because it does give another level of validation to that place being open and being real. So it's just kind of a cool thing to do, but it's $200 to $400 depending on where you're at. In New York City, it might cost you as high as $500 or $600. And some small rural town, it could be $150, but it's worth it because now you've got custom content that you could use on your page that makes your pages stand out. So I think that's number two, is really just focusing on that local page. Some examples of pages that you could look at and reverse engineer if you want to see what we've been doing over the years. Look at some of the city pages on public storage. I think Portland, Oregon was a good example of where we put some hyper-local content in. Look at Meineke Car Care Centers. Look at Applebees and IHOP. Look at all of their specific location pages and the sub-pages that are underneath them. To see a sub-page, once you're actually on that location page, just go to if you're in Chrome, just go to your browser address bar, type in SITE and colon. So it's SITE and colon and the whole URL. And it's going to show you all the sub-pages that we've created over the years to try to absorb more traffic from organic search. So data, local landing page. Any questions on those two before we roll?
Yeah, so just for clarity, we're talking about this is the pages on the actual website.
Correct.
We're talking about potentially creating, in effect, mini sites for each of the locations, but on the same domain, on the same
On the
website.
same domain, yes.
And to get away from duplicate content, we're talking about dynamic content. We're talking about employee generated content. And the prices that you were quoting, that was for Google Photographs, yeah?
That was for the Google photographer, correct?
Yeah. I just wanted to check that. So, yeah, my question was going to be around, is there a concern about duplicate content there? Because, you can only do so much, even dynamically, with, 60 fields. It's an impressive number. I guess the answer is in the number of fields, potentially, to make sure that content is so different.
I think it's in the helpfulness. Yeah, I don't even know if it's about the fields, but it's about how helpful the content is. So one of the ways to mitigate the duplicate content issue is by having user generated content. So you can actually put up native reviews when somebody visits that web page and says, "Hey, have you been to this location before? Tell us about your experience." Again, there's another level of moderation because you don't want just anything to show up on your web page. Somebody has to be at that queue to read the review. Right, read it closely because some people can be really shady in how they word things and do things, and make sure it makes sense. I would even prompt the user who's leaving a review to say specific things that'll help you to get more keywords on the page, such as tell us about how you ordered. Did you order delivery or takeout? How was the experience with it? Were they fast?
So you're using examples of restaurants here. Let's stick with that for a moment.
Sure.
What might be those? I mean, you were talking about sometimes 10, 15 pages. Well, I'm trying to think what there could be. I get the location in terms of you've just come out of a concert, etc.
Sure.
But what other pages might you have there, just as a couple of examples? Because pricing and menu would be the obvious one. That's going to be the same across all locations. So talk to me about what some of those pages could be.
Sure. Yeah, and the menu we generally keep, and they do vary by location, but the menu we generally keep on the primary page. Other sub pages that you might think about if you're a restaurant could be specials, could be coupons, right? Could be reviews. So when someone is looking for a review, they don't hit Yelp, they hit your site, so you get priority over those nasty filtered Yelp reviews that are out there. It could be around specific items. I mentioned jobs. Right, people are looking for restaurant jobs here. Well, they will be in the new year anyway.
Yeah.
So I think there's events as well. There's catering. There's Jack. Go on forever, Johnny. There's
Brilliant.
So many things that you could do.
You've made it clear. Excellent. Okay, makes perfect sense. Loving it. So that was pillar number 2, which was all about relevancy, but it was also all about beefing up
Local page.
the local pages. Yeah. So pillar 3.
You got it. Oh, by the way, real quick on that study we did, we actually put an infographic together that shows you an ideal page. So if you want to use that to marry against it, feel free.
Brilliant.
So you already mentioned this one. This was citations, and our friends at White Spark, Darren Shaw, he did this little study, and there's this law of diminishing return, right? You can't, if your competitors all have their business listed in 35, 40 directories, and you put yourself into 300. And you try to go for another, 100 after that, you're not really going to see much of a difference in ranking. There is, a limit to how valuable that could be. But here's how you would break it down. When you're working with your off-page SEO team, maybe it's your social media, your PR. Maybe you've got somebody who earns links, right? We don't say link building anymore because it's kind of a faux pas. But that person's going to look in several different places. They're going to start with the search engines, right? Making sure we are in the Google business profile, making sure we are in the Yahoo local and in Bing local, making sure that we're in the search engines first because that's where people are looking. Next is going to be those navigational engines. So your Nokia here, right? MapQuest, TomTom, right? All of those navigational engines that people will see when they're in a car somewhere and using car navigation. You don't want them to go to the wrong location. You want to make sure that information is correct and they're going to get to your location smoothly. So you've got your search engines, your navigation engines. You've also got your social local, right? Your Yelp, your Facebook, Foursquare. Technically, even though it's a database, it's also a site with a business directory. So you want to make sure that you're there, and especially Yelp and TripAdvisor. You see them showing up in local search results so much. So we just want to make sure if they are going to show a Yelp or a TripAdvisor, that we've utilized every available field, we've uploaded all the pictures we possibly can, and that we've got a great experience there, and that we're not just trying to rank in Google, we're trying to rank in those social local destinations as well.
Yeah.
Next would be your actual industry directories. Now, it's not really a lot in, say, retail. If you're selling shoes, for example, there's not like a shoe store directory, right? But if you're in restaurants, there's Restaurant G, there's Open Table, there's Seamless, right? There's so many different places that you can work with to give them a bulk feed of all your listings so that they keep their databases up to date. Sometimes they'll charge you, sometimes they don't, depending on how big of a brand you are and how much they think they can convince you into advertising with them. But that would be industry. So if you're a lawyer, you're going to be in lawyers.com and Avo and Justia and FindLaw and All Law, right? If you're a chiropractor, you'll be in the chiropractor directories. We've seen those be really effective because it's sort of the hub of the semantic web around a particular topic. If we're not in all the same places our competitors are, maybe we don't offer the same things, and maybe Google shouldn't show us for the same keywords. So that would be one. The next one I would do is your actual regional, local citations. Sometimes this could mean something as simple as your Chamber of Commerce. It could be the city website /business directory, right? Those sort of hyper local directories that aren't big web directories like Merchant Circle or Hot Frog. We're talking about lacitydirectory.org or something like that. So that's one approach. The other creative aspect that gets into the citation building when you're talking about regional placements is partnering up with neighboring businesses, maybe doing an event every few months, run some really fun charitable event, help kids, help help the neighborhood, help the community, do something that makes a huge difference, and have the event be at your location so that when you're promoting it to your neighbors and to your neighboring businesses, and many of which aren't going to be able to afford to participate or be able to have the time or resources to participate, will be more than happy to share it on their website as an alternative to actually putting in any kind of effort. It's unfortunate, but that's just the reality of doing events. But when you do that and you send out a street team comes back and says, hey, I was able to actually get a couple volunteers, but better, we got 25 of our neighboring businesses to mention the name, address, phone number, and what we do, and directions, and maybe even link directly to our website. So we actually got 25 links out of it too. So we earned some links, we earned some citations from our neighboring businesses that are nearby. That crushes it. We've seen it time and time again, where if you're able to get local business listings, your name, address, phone number, and maybe a link to your website, and in a context where it includes what you do, right? Oh, go to IHOP breakfast restaurants in such and such, right? So we've included the search term in context. That makes such a big difference in our map rankings and in our local page organic rankings. So the last part of it is a little bit controversial, and that's the general directories. Those, I mentioned a few of them: Merchant Circle, Hot Frog, yellowpages.com. We don't use these websites anymore, but for some reason, maybe it's just they've got a really good sales team. They're calling out all these older businesses. They're getting them to pay for advertising.
I think you're right. They've got a good sales team.
Yeah, they must, because nobody goes to them. We have Google. Why would we possibly need to go to merchantcircle.com? The only way these guys stay in business is by doing advertising to businesses that don't know any better. And the value 10 years ago probably was still up there because people still were kind of playing around a little bit with directories, but nobody uses them anymore. No one says, hey, Merchant Circle that for me, right? They just don't do it. So there's not a lot of value in those, simply because the links that you're going to get aren't on pages that generate a lot of traffic. They don't get crawled very often by search engines. They just don't pass the same value as what might on a site that actually gets local traffic to it. So that's my spiel on citations.
So couple of quick things there. Yeah, I mean, in the UK, Yell.com, perfect example. I think they've got a great sales team, and I think that's why they're doing okay. I was going to say, so it sounds great, this whole idea of events and getting 25, earning 25 links, etc. But you talk a lot about scale, and how the hell do you scale that to 2,000 locations?
It's actually not that difficult. There's there's this cool little thing that we can use that you've heard of probably multiple times called markup. We can add some markup to our local pages that promote the event, and that'll give us an extra row in the search results. It'll have
Sorry,
a
I
date
meant
next to it.
I meant putting the event on though. So actually organizing an event though, because that's what you're talking about, aren't you? You're talking about
Sure.
organizing an event. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, but now it's kind of getting into where it can add value at the scale, right? At scale, of course you add that markup, and it gives you the event date that you can use. But what I've seen businesses do really well here, we've got a big day once a year where a lot of restaurants give away free meals or discounted meals for Veterans Day, right? So what we'll do there is, suggest to the location, since we're going to be running this promo, to to walk over to the neighboring businesses and let them know that that event's going on.
So
And
it's an event. It's one date that you might use the same date
even if
across
you
all
only have one,
locations.
yep.
Yeah.
Even
Okay.
if you only have one, but
Okay.
still throughout the year, there's going to be multiple things
Yeah.
going
Yeah.
on:
Yeah.
promos,
I get it.
coupons, events. We've got our Black Friday sales, and
I get
and
it.
Cyber Mondays. There's a million reasons that you can come up with for coming
Yeah.
up
Yeah.
with events, but honestly, the best thing that you could do is allow the locations themselves to do charitable events, because it makes a difference in the community. People remember that and they recognize it more than they do a discount. So
Yeah.
if you can do that, do that. If you can't, then do the the annual, biannual, quarterly events. Put that
Yeah.
markup on the page so that you've got some extra clickable information in search results, and then have those customers or those neighboring businesses linked to that.
Makes perfect sense.
Yep.
We're on to our final pillar.
This one's the obvious one, and this is reviews and ratings, because nobody's going to click on your result if you've got 1 star or 2 ratings, and the guy above you or the listing above you has a 4.9, and they've got 300 or 400 ratings and reviews. The trust factor, the social proof factor of that in and of itself is enough to prevent somebody from clicking on your website, which over time, the search engine is going to be like, well, if no one's clicking on this, why am I still showing it in my search results? It could ultimately result in demotion, and your listing going down and down and down over time. So I think having a really solid plan of how we're going to increase the quality, the quantity, and the velocity of those reviews over time can make a huge difference. And what it also tells the search engines is that I'm open, right? If you don't get a review for a couple months, ooh, is this place closed? They haven't logged into their Google business profile. No one's left them a review. I wonder if they're even still open. I think I'm going to show one that got a review yesterday over this one and see if it gets more engagement. Ooh, people clicked on that more often, so I'm going to let that one just die. Right? So I think having a cadence, where you're going back to every employee and holding them accountable to the success of what you're doing from a foot traffic standpoint by leveraging reviews, by just one simple little question before someone leaves is, hey, if I did a really good job today, would you be willing to leave a review wherever you tend to leave them? Don't force them into one place or the other, because if they're not an active Google user, it might cause skepticism from someone who clicks on that user and says they only left 1 review in their whole life and it was for you. So make sure they leave the review where they're comfortable leaving reviews, and you'll find over time most of them are still now using Google. Some are still using Yelp. A few might still use Facebook. But in the medical industry, they're going to use a lot of the healthcare ratings sites as well. So just ask a simple question of, hey, if we did a great job for you today, we'd appreciate you sharing your feedback. If we didn't, I'd love for you to talk to our manager and see what we could do better for next time. It's okay to be transparent. People understand, and they know how important reviews are for businesses. They know that if you get a bad review, it could destroy your business, knowing that most of your new customers are coming from search. So consumers know now. They're smart enough to know the impact of what a review can do, and it's okay to ask. And obviously for Yelp, they don't want you asking for reviews, so you simply say something to the effect of, if they say, oh, I use Yelp, oh cool, well, make sure you check in next time, right? If you didn't check in this time, check in now if you got a second, because Yelp will remind them to leave a review later. It's not a big deal as long as you just mention it in context. Like, oh yeah, I forgot. They do their thing. So there's the 4 pillars, but I think where it gets lost in companies not holding their teams accountable every month. I think there should be a 10-minute minimum 10-minute review once a month where you work with your team members on all 4 of those things. How did we improve the accuracy of our data this past month? How did we improve our local page so that we get lower bounce rates, more conversions and online orders, and our rankings for our pages improve? Right? What did we do this past month to improve our pages? Did we look at the competing pages to see what they're doing? Are we monitoring using a tool like Visual Ping so that when they make changes to their website, we can pay attention to it and see what's working for our competitors? What did we do this month to improve our business citations? Maybe we used GeoRanker or WhiteSpark's local citation finder tool to monitor where our competitors are getting listed and make sure that we're there. Maybe we'll even take some competitive areas that aren't in our area and see where those folks are getting, their listings, so that we can use that as, additional opportunity or expansion opportunity. What did we do this past month to improve the quality, quantity, and velocity of our reviews and ratings? And if you hold, the team accountable to those things and maybe incentivize them, set some goals and say, by the end of the year, we want to be here. If you guys can help us get to this place, then we're going to have a big, party at, whatever local restaurant as a thank you for everybody staying accountable to those KPIs, or you'll all get a day off work, or, just something fun to get them motivated about that particular role. And reminding them halfway through the month, hey, just a reminder, we're halfway through the month. Hopefully you've been paying attention to your data accuracy, your local page, your citations, or your reputation, because in 2 weeks, we're going to review it together. Some people get really, really busy with the day-to-day and they'll forget those things and how important they are. So that's, to me, that's local. And of course, how you scale each one of them. The first is through the data management platforms we mentioned. The second, is by using, a blend of survey, user-generated content, and custom fields, maybe doing some data mining. The third is, by working with some of those platforms who already have relationships with those citation sources like Yelp and so forth. The data management platforms in many cases already have one-to-one relationships. Yext, for example, has direct API access to immediately update your data in some of those destinations. Others, have a submission and it once a month updates. And then the last part is managing reviews and ratings. There are platforms that can do this. Even those data management platforms have a component that can do that as well. But there's a lot. There's like Birdeye. There's, what's another really big one? There's a ton of those review reputation management. Chatmeter is another. And they'll actually send emails to every location manager and saying, here's the reviews you got yesterday. You probably want to prioritize responding to these right away. And then everybody's every day notified and playing a role in paying attention to online reputation. So there's how I would scale it, leveraging some of those platforms, or at least, holding the appropriate stakeholders accountable for their particular pillar of local search.
Well, Steve, I've not even had to ask you many questions because you've just
rambling.
You've been amazing at just giving so much help and resource away. And, I can't tell you, I appreciate it so much. The tools you've mentioned, the thoughts, the techniques, the strategies, it's been absolutely brilliant. And I can see how you can scale it quite easily, really, especially if we were to get help from you, which brings me on to, if I was a big brand right now, listening, watching, I had, 300 plus locations, maybe I had 4,000 locations, and I want to really make a bigger difference with my local. How do I contact you? What's the best website to go to, Steve? Where's that infographic as well?
Absolutely. Well, the infographic and the studies on our website, it's Wiideman.com, Wiideman.com. And something that we are doing still at the moment is we're doing a free SEO assessment. So if you are looking at, hey, where do we need to be next year? What are some quick wins? We'll look at tech, we'll look at keywords, we'll look at, off page, and we'll come up with some initial recommendations. And if that's helpful and you want more, we'll suggest a strategy. And then beyond that, we could jump into something where we kind of help sort of a do it with you, with your team, to help them to really grasp those different areas of search. So yeah, please, if there's something that we can do to support you, even if it's just taking advantage of our free review, reach out. I'm all over social too. My handle's SEO Steve, pretty much everywhere. If you want to hit up our team, we have 9 team members and they all love to help, especially small businesses who need help. please reach out. It's just Wiideman is our handle there, Wiideman. And, whatever we can do to support you. And if we don't, if we don't hear from you, you can also check out our, we actually have a training course if you're interested at Academy of Search. I'd love to give all your listeners free access to that. We're going to be evolving it over time as we create more courses. But if you go to Academy of Search, sign up for the $600 program, use code SEO Steve, and you can get free access to it, including some of our audit templates and some of the stuff that we use to actually build a solid strategy for SEO.
Just give the name again.
Academyofsearch.com.
Academyofsearch.com, and the coupon SEO Steve.
You got it. One word.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. This has been absolutely brilliant. I've really enjoyed chatting to you, and really thanks so much for your time as well. If you've been watching, if you've been listening, if you've got some feedback, if you want to leave reviews, please do so. If you want to help us earn links, do so. I thought I'd be a bit flippant.
I love it.
But no, seriously, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. And really appreciate you being here. Hope this has helped you, and look forward to seeing you all again soon on the next pod. We will see you all soon. Thanks, Steve. Take care.
Thanks, everyone.